up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on this alien experience stories. Today I'm going to be talking about another one of my OBEs, and this one I met a new species. I've met so many, it's so wild. But so if you see my other videos, I know like the difference between like lucid dreaming and when I'm astral traveling, essentially in my dream state, because when I'm lucid dreaming, I usually can tell like my hands look weird, my environment looks off. There's always something that kind of is like glitchy is the best way to describe it. And these experiences are hyper real, nothing's off, and I'm just having these experiences is the best way to describe it. So this is another one where I was woken up and I put on my clothes and I felt the urge to open my door and go outside. It was night. Nothing was off about my house. Nothing was off about my hands. Nothing was off about my clothes or anything. And it felt very, very real. And I opened the door and there was a small white alien, maybe 3.5 to 4 foot tall. And they were wearing a navy jumpsuit that had like accents, silver accents like here and here, and had this orange like emblem on like their chest. And I asked if I could give them a hug, and I was really excited to see them. And they said yes in my mind, and so I bent down on my knees and I had to hunch my back a little to hug them. And when I hugged them, I felt a lot of warmth. I felt a lot of love, like in this exchange of emotion. Because a lot of telepathy, there's also emotions that get exchanged, sometimes images, and but it was a lot of like love and acceptance and just peace. And they felt so weird. Like their skin was so weird. It's so hard for me to describe because I've never felt anything like it. So closest thing I can think of is like those foam squishy toys, but if there was no paint on them, it had this soft but almost like ripple texture, but like microscopic. You know how the sponge is kind of ripply in those sponges, not wholly, but like kind of ripply, but like microscopic, like you could feel it. On our skin, like it has a texture, and their skin was just very different texture and almost like micro bumps on it, but very small. And they were sticky, and that was the weirdest part for me. Not like sweat sticky, like somewhere between a slime and like water. Like it was like more viscous and sticky than like water, like sweat. But it wasn't as sticky as like a putty or like a sticky glue or anything like that. It wasn't that level of sticky. It's not like if we touched it'd be like a string coming off, but it just was more viscous and like slightly more sticky than water. Maybe the closest thing would be like a Dawn soap, but slightly more sticky, but not as, maybe slightly viscous, more viscous, but it's so hard to describe. That's like the hardest part when I talk about stuff like this, because it's the things I've experienced. It's so hard to describe and it's so hard to communicate. And, I don't expect anyone to believe me. These experiences are my own, but I'm just sharing in the hopes that someone else has experiences too. And it was just so weird. And it was a classic alien of like big, large, black eyes, slits for a nose, basically slits for a mouth, no discernible ears. So I didn't really draw them because they're so similar to like the other ones, but just tall and white, totally different skin, totally different weird viscousness. And they told me they wanted me to join them on their mission. I didn't know what the mission was. I didn't even really care. I just said yes in my mind, and we started walking towards the ships that were like in the driveway. And there was a very tall, pale-skinned, blonde, human-looking guy. He was masculine looking. They're all in the same jumpsuits. Then there was like a smaller lizard being. And I didn't really pay much attention to the one that looked very human because it wasn't as fascinating as the small white one and the lizard one, because I've never seen those two kinds before. And so I went up to the lizard to get a better look of him, and he was in this like almost like egg-shaped ship, and he had like a round seat, and he had these two like gill-like apparatuses that were for controlling, what I was assuming. But it's extremely, again, hard to describe, but they were like gills in a fish, or like gills, if sea anemones were gills, I guess. And it was in a figure eight shape, so like, like wider and then small in the center and twisted like a figure eight, like twisted. And it was undulating, so all the gills would go like up and down like in this wave motion. And the whole thing would also be like kind of like twisting with this figure eight as well. It was kind of like they were rippling through this figure eight in that weird pattern. And he was like the pilot of this little ship, and he was like, he would like stick his hands in the things, in these gill things, and then they would like start to glow, and it was like he could like move and control them, and I just assumed that's how he controlled the ship. And he looked very lizard-like. I mean, like a typical lizard. I wouldn't say draconic. I would say like a lizard person. I mean, he was really small, maybe like a foot taller than like the small white one. And his skin was green and it glistened on the moonlight. It had like a slight reflective quality. He had like a hole for his ear. His tongue, he had a forked tongue that kept coming in and out of his mouth, which is basically just how lizards and snakes can like taste the air and smell and just extra sensories. And his eyes were the most interesting because they were like a black circle, and then there were all these little white circles around the black circle, and they were bulbous, and they were sticking out like bulbous past his eyes. His black part of his eye is the best way to describe it. And he's in the same jumpsuit. They're all in these same navy jumpsuits. And I was just fascinated looking at him, and he didn't say anything to me with telepathy, but I just had wonderful feelings all around from, I guess, the crew. Everyone was just so peaceful, and that was like the main feeling I was getting, is like peace and strength, and like no fear, none of that. There was like no way to be afraid. And that's especially what happens in OBEs versus like real experiences, where I'm like seeing them in my bed versus seeing them in the astral realm or in the dream realm. There's a separation from body that I feel like separates my body from reacting with fear, even though there's nothing to be afraid of. Because like when I see them physically, my body reacts with fear, even though my mind knows they mean no harm. And then I feel like they like coming in the astral or the dream realms because it could just bypasses my body's automatic fear response to seeing something strange. And it's, just faster and easier than trying to soothe me or whatever. And the ship was very egg-shaped, and it kind of had like an open top, like the top could close or open. Not like a Ferrari or, a car, right? Like there's no like thing that you see, like a top shell that would go down that's still attached. Like it must be maybe an energetic thing or a like fully retractable or energy. I don't know how it works. And I didn't ask. I was too fascinated. So this I drew when it happened on my iPad. So this is like the lizard guy. Here's like the slits. Here's like the eyes. And the whites of his eyes were pretty reflective, and the black too. And so was the skin, but I couldn't really capture that really well. And then there's his little forked tongue going in and out. And so like for his eye, this is what I mean. It was like bulbous, like all these white bulbs were like sticking out like circles past his eye. And this is like the ship. So this is like his chair because his legs were down here and then you could see this front part sticking out. And then these were these gilly things he would stick his hands on or in, and then they would like glow. And ignore the blue dot, that's just an accident. So this is kind of like the view I had from the side. Like I could see his head and the stripe, and these were like lights. And it was like hovering above the ground, and I walked over to him to get a better look, and then I could see in the ship because there was no like covering at that moment. I mean, it looked like a little just like transporter guy type of ship. And here's like the gill things. I don't know how to draw them or describe them. But, you know, it was in this figure 8, so it, like, is bigger and smaller, but think twisted. Like, the gills are twisted like this figure 8, and they undulate with the figure 8 up, like, and down, which was really fascinating. And here's what the suits kind of look like. It was navy with these, like, gray stripes, and this, like, orange emblem, kind of like a planet, but not very discernible, and I wasn't really paying attention as much to the suits as I was the lizard guy especially was really interesting. And this didn't like cover their feet. It just kind of looks like that because of how I drew it. But so everyone was wearing this kind of suit. And it was just really interesting to see like a lizard type guy. And I mean, he was short. And think like lizard hands, like scaly hands with claws. It was like 4, like, and short, you know, not like a typical draconic. Like this has to be some other lizard-like species who's a part of some sort of group. So there's that. I didn't really draw the little white one because it was so like stereotypical alien, except for like how visceral that skin was and the perspiration or whatever it was. And there were these other ships behind him that the white skinned like human looking one was in, and what I assumed the little white alien was in as well. It was like twice the size of his ship, and they wanted me to come with them. And like as soon as I was about to like get into the other ship, that I woke up and I was in my bed and I was freaking out. And I'm always like, why am I in my clothes? Why am I in my bed? How did I get in my bed? And it's super disorienting. It's not really the good part. It's like the part that I hate the most is like when I wake up in bed and I'm completely disoriented and I don't know why I'm in bed or how I got in bed or any of that really, and I'm just confused. So yeah, this is another one of my very interesting OBE type experiences. And if you've had any similar experiences or any experiences of your own, I'd love to hear about it. I mean, I never expect anyone to believe me, but I appreciate you listening. And if you have any similar or your own experiences, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. And if you're enjoying hearing about my different experiences, feel free to like, and I'll keep telling you guys about them, because I still have a lot more that I have journaled about and stuff like that. So just stay tuned. Thank you.